Welcome to the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley, psychology student and international best-selling psychology author of over 30 psychology books, bringing you the latest psychology news, fascinating psychology topics and more each week. If you want to learn more, then please check out connorwhiteley.net/books. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube video or follow on your favourite podcast app. And here's the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 215 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley. And today's episode is on why the LGBT plus community is not, I repeat, not a danger to children. And it is Friday the 16th of June 2023 as I record this. So I left this podcast episode to last for a reason. I know I will get a lot of hate for this. I know I will get a lot of bad emails, and I know I will lose audience members because this is such an ingrained myth in society. I basically know that I'm going to get hate for this, but I'm doing it because this is the truth. It needs to be said, and these two myths really do damage people. They drive up homophobia, and as you see, there's a study that said that these two myths I'm going to cover in today's episode, they do lead to a dramatic increase in suicides. So this needs to be said. I absolutely love this, and this is actually a really positive podcast episode because I do put quite a comical spin on it. Because this is such a dark and it's such a serious topic that you really do need some sort of lightheartedness. So I love this. I've been wanting to talk about this for so long, especially because of what's happening in the US, that if you make it to the end, then you're amazing, because I know that this will go against so many beliefs that people have because of the media, politicians, and the parental groups that I see on social media, saying that how they've got to protect children from gayness because all their kids are going to be turned gay if they see something. No, that's a myth. It's a horrible myth. It's an offensive myth, and yeah, it shows a massive lack of understanding. And again, none of us know this stuff by expert. None of us have lived experience with this, but it's that ignorance, or it's that not willing to actually listen and at least learn about it. That's the problem. And that's just real ignorance. Of course, I don't need to tell any of you that because you're listening to this. So if you are, you're amazing. And as always, I always love to hear your thoughts and feelings on today's episode. So you can always email me, connorwhiteley@connorwhiteley.net. You can always leave a comment on the show notes at connorwhiteley.net/podcast. And you can always tweet me on Twitter at sci-fi Whiteley. I always love to hear from all of you. It really helps make the podcast feel more like a conversation. And please, I would absolutely love to have a conversation about this, because it would be great to get some more positive feedback, because I know my inbox is going to be filled with the haters. So really, really interesting. And today's podcast episode has been sponsored by Social Psychology, a guide to social and cultural psychology. So this is an absolute brilliant sponsor for today's episode, because this is all about in groups and out groups. This is all about social psychology and how different groups perceive communities. So this great, really easy to understand book actually helps you to understand the psychology behind this. So why do people perceive out groups with such danger and, to be honest, hatred at times? What is the social psychology behind prejudice and discrimination? What's the psychology behind a persuasion, and so many more absolutely brilliant topics that you will find fascinating. So, but this really does focus on the social groups, which when we're looking at a topic like this is absolutely critical, because once we understand why different social groups basically hate each other or have such prejudice against each other, then we can start to understand how to combat it. I seriously do recommend it. So that's Social Psychology, a guide to social and cultural psychology, available from all major ebook retailers and you can get the paperback and hardback version from Amazon, your local bookstore or local library. And you can buy the ebook directly from me at payhip.com/ConWhiteley. So whilst the buying books helps to support the creation and the editing of the podcast, my time is sponsored by my wonderful patrons, and as always, absolutely massive thank you to my wonderful patrons. Because your support helps us to show that you like the podcast and you want it to continue. So if you wanted to become a patron of the show and get a lot of great benefits, including early access to the blog posts and tons of other rewards like behind the scene footage, then you can now become a patron at patreon.com/the Psychology Word Podcast. So that's enough of the personal update. Let's move on to the content part of today's episode. So moving on to the content part of today's episode. So for this final Pride Month in Aspired podcast episode, we're going to be talking about my absolute favourite topic, why the LGBT plus community is not a danger to children. Love this topic because it needs to be said, and it really, really does, because this is basically just so many myths, and it's honestly stupid myths because they're lies. So let's dive into it. Why we need to talk about this? Back before my friends and others knew I was gay, because of the area I lived in, I heard a hell of a lot of homophobia, and some of that hate was spreading the lie that gay people love to rape children. Yes, that is basically word for word of what I've heard. That was actually what a very dear friend of mine has said once, and as you can imagine, I don't talk to that person anymore. And a lot of people from my childhood just believed that was the truth, and they truly believed that gay adoption, gay people having children, was wrong, because they truly believed in the lies that gay people are paedophiles. I won't lie or pretend to be strong with you, but that was extremely hurtful and damaging to me. In addition, you only have to look at the USA, with over 400 anti-LGBT plus bills being introduced by Republican-led legislators across the country. Also, I remember the bill that banned drag acts in front of children being done in Tennessee, and the reason given on the news for that bill was to stop children being exposed to corrupting, sinful and paedophilic content. To be honest, one of the biggest reasons why that's a lie is because if we think about pantomimes, there's like a massive double standard here. I always remember Aladdin, and in Aladdin, at least in the UK, but I know it's like in other places too, you have Widow Twanku, and he was nationally loved, and he's just part of our culture. Like, you cannot have Aladdin without Widow Twanku, which is a man dressed up as a woman. And you would always see this pantomime at Christmas. But he was a man dressing up as a woman, and the entire world had no problem with him being a woman on a Christmas panto that was watched by thousands of children. Hypocrite much? Or like at least a double standard. Also, of course, this legal action doesn't just stop at drag shows. Below is a list of other activities that are now illegal in some US states because of this dangerous lies. Gay story time, books containing LGBT plus characters, criminalising gender affirmative care, criminalising healthcare to transgender people, banning transgender youth from competing in sport, banning books that even reference homosexuality in passing, because of course like, you can't mention it. It's just silly. So, and to be honest, there are a lot of silly points being banned and made illegal at the moment. Another negative consequence of this myth can be seen when American musician Kid Rock was shooting Bud Light cans because the company dared, I say in air quotes, to have a partnership with a transgender TikTok influencer. And the reason why this is bad is because this isn't really a metaphor. It is basically saying that shooting transgender people is okay, and shooting cans because this company decided to do a partnership is only one step removed from actually doing that in real life. Anyway, the myth that LGBT plus people are a threat to children is so ingrained in our culture, and it's a complete and utter lie that drives hate, persecution, and attacks against the LGBT plus community that care for the safety of children just as much as heterosexuals. And this has a lot to do with politics and anti-gay groups and politicians that are stoking the flames and inventing culture wars. They don't exist. I mean, I always laugh when there's culture wars because, yeah, culture changes, society changes, but this isn't a war. Like, no one's actually going to get hurt. To get the public to believe in these lies, and I think that they've worked too perfectly for too long. So what's the truth behind these lies? Why the LGBT plus community aren't paedophiles. All in all, it is a very common lie and myth that gay means the same as paedophile, since whenever the news talk about priests and scout leaders raping younger boys, people think gay. Whenever people think about trans women, they think of overly sex-obsessed men that want to get access to women's bathrooms and toilets so they can interfere with them. Again, both are lies. And my own personal thoughts on the whole trans women are just sexual predators lie is that if a man wants to harm and interfere with a woman, he is going to do that whatever. He is not going to go through the long medical diagnosis, the long heartbreaking and traumatic experience of getting this diagnosis and then applying to change his birth certificate and then dressing up as a woman just to get access to a woman's bathroom. If a man is going to harm a woman, he will just go into that public restroom and do whatever horrific thing he wants to do. It's disgusting. It's outrageous. But he will not go through the long and arduous process just to become officially transgender and become officially a woman. It just will not happen. And trans women are not sexual predators. The truth is, paedophiles are almost exclusively straight, white men that are attracted to and preying on innocent children. The idea that gay people being attracted to children and preying on them is disgusting, lie that is just peddled out by straight white men to deflect from their own group. And the very idea that gay and transgender people are just sexual beings that can't control themselves is just wrong, a lie, and seriously offended. And at the end of the day, gay people and trans people just use the bathroom like everyone else. All we want to do is just go to the bathroom, do our business, and leave. No one wants to be in a bathroom any longer than needed, especially at train stations, because they smell. No one wants that. Why homosexuality and transgenderism are not a choice. This is a massive myth that I do laugh about a lot because I've seen it so much in the homophobia in June 2023 alone. And also, please note that that as I'm recording this, it's only been the first half of the month, so I've seen it tons. But there seems to be this utter myth and lie that being gay is a choice, and there's a myth that if you expose children to LGBT plus content, you're going to make them gay. Which you won't. Just like if you expose a gay person to straight content, you won't make them straight. Since no one turns a person gay or straight, it is simply how they are. This myth and fear comes from the idea, and it is a driving force behind much of the anti-gay legislation, when in reality, exposure does make a child or anyone gay. In actual fact, we have little control over who we are and what we become in our lives, and children suffering from gender dysphoria can't simply shut it off, nor can they pretend to feel like their gender at birth without experiencing severe and extreme mental health difficulties. And again, this all leads to suicide in the end. Since a study by Tommy and all 2018 found that over half of transgender male teenagers attempted suicide, and the national statistic for the USA when it comes to trans suicide is 41%. 41% of an entire tiny population. So that is just outrageously high. It's disgusting. And the not so funny thing about all the bigots and the anti-trans and the anti-gay activists was they always bang on about how important parental control and child protection is, and they want to prevent and prosecute parents that are trying to help their child transition. But all this hate and this prevention and this persecution of parents when they're trying to support their child is actually increasing suicides across the world. So all these anti-groups, all these anti-trans and anti-gay groups, they aren't helping people. Meaning that they aren't protecting children. And I will say it point blank. These anti-trans activists, they are killing children. I don't care if it's indirectly, but these trans activists, they are killing children because they are not allowing people to support these people. So mental health difficulties get worse, and suicide seems the only way out. It's as simple as that. And believe me, when it comes to this topic, I definitely have the authority to say that. Conclusion. I admit this podcast episode might have taken a mildly dark turn towards the end, but this is life. This is what millions of gay people and transgender people have to experience each and every day. Also, I was talking with a trans male friend of mine a few months ago about homophobia, about these exact myths, and he said that we have to laugh about the stupidity of them, or we would just cry about them, and I agree, which is why I've tried to keep this so upbeat and positive. These myths are so ingrained in our society, so ingrained in the media, and so ingrained in the minds of heterosexuals, that it is funny just how powerful and influential these lies are, because they are based in delusions about a community most people will never meet, because the trans community is so tiny. And to be honest, the rest of the LGBT plus community is microscopic too, in comparison to the rest of the population. So I will wrap up this podcast episode by saying that I'm extremely grateful that you wonderful readers and listeners have actually been enjoying and supporting these podcast episodes. I have received hate, and again, this is the first half of the month, so I know I'm going to get tons more. I have had people unsubscribe from my email list, and I know I have lost podcast listeners. Believe me, I've seriously lost a few because I've dared to cover these topics, and people have been really annoyed that I've actually covered these topics. But all these things that I've been talking about this month have needed to be said because I want people to know the truth. I want people to realise that gay people aren't predators, and that I want people to realise some of the hardships that they experience on a daily basis. And I can sum up why in 2 sentences from 2 memes I've seen on Instagram this past month. Open quote. I don't put pride flags up to tell people who's in my bed. I put them up so the family across the street knows they're safe. Close quote. Open quote. Pride isn't about turning straight kids into queer kids. Pride is about not turning queer kids into dead kids. Close quote. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode and you got something out of it. I've been wanting to do this podcast episode for so long. I'm really passionate about it because it is just such a lie and it's such a damaging myth. And if you've been indirectly or if you've been directly called that, but just because you're gay, then you will have an idea about how hurtful that is and how upsetting it is, because it's just so disgusting to be called a paedophile. So it's wrong on so many levels, and yeah, it's really, really hurtful. But as I said in the conclusion, I have lost a lot of listeners, and again, if I was being a code business person or a code podcast producer, I would not have done these past 5 episodes because I have received so much hate, and I know that I've lost listeners that used to love the show. But again, though, because at this time of year, and to be honest, at all times of year, people have got to stand up for this very vulnerable community. So if you're still listening, you are amazing, and I honestly wish that you have an absolute brilliant day. So if you know someone who would enjoy today's podcast episode, please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word about the podcast. And if you want to learn more, definitely check out Social Psychology, a guide to social and cultural psychology, available in all of the usual places. And if you want to become a patron of the show, definitely check out patreon.com/the Psychology World Podcast. So have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you found it helpful. Please remember to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow the podcast on your favourite podcast app. And if you wanted to learn more, then please check out the backlist of the podcast episodes or my books at conwhiteley.net. So have a great day, and I'll see you next time.